You hear that part, like,
Yeah.
anyway, let me get it. I might as well have a Bible. You know, it was good this morning. Good job, Pastor, that he preached out of, Proverbs. If you remember last week, I had suggested that everybody read Proverbs. You read one proverb a day. You read the whole book of Proverbs in a month, which means you could read it 12 times. But the big deal was I said that God gave Solomon the greatest wisdom ever. Okay? And he wrote it in the book. And we should read the book. We got all that wisdom, and we should, we should read it. So reading it every day in bed. But in chapter 1, gotta get I'm not used to handling this as I am. Let's see. It says in verse 7. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Instruction. So what it's saying is that, the wise gain knowledge, and those who don't look to the wisdom don't gain knowledge. What do you say? They despise wisdom and instruction. So anyway, I thought that was good. So anyway, on your handout is similar to last week's in that I've listed the events from Matthew 8 and 9. And what I said last week was that Jesus did all the stuff. He did the baptism. We had the voice from heaven of God saying, "This is my son, whom I'm well pleased." Holy Spirit, dove lands upon him. And then he goes into the wilderness. He does kind of verbal battle with Satan. And then he comes out and he ascends onto the mountain and spends 3 chapters giving the Sermon on the Mount, which again is great wisdom. Some listen to, some don't. And when we get to the parables of Jesus, we'll see that only certain people gain the wisdom from the parables. And then it says at the beginning of chapter 8, and then he came down from the mountain. Okay, so we know he came down from the mountain, and he started doing things that he does. You see, if you read the Gospels correctly, you're going to see that in John presents Jesus as God. Okay? Get that in your head. Everything you read in John should lead you to believe Jesus is God. This is what John's saying. Jesus is God. No matter what the story is that he's telling. Okay? He's pointing to Jesus as God. Matthew points to Jesus as King. And it's the same hermeneutic, same understanding, the same rule you follow, is that knowing that Matthew presents Jesus as King, you should be able to read into just about every story something about the kingdom and about the king. Okay, so it said that he came down from the mountain, and that the first thing he did was he healed the leper. And we talked about that. We talked about that last week. But something that I thought was interesting, because remember when he healed the leper, what did he tell the leper to do?
Don't tell him.
Don't tell him. Go to the priest, show it to the priest, bring your offering to the priest. All those things that the Old Testament had said, the law of Moses said that you do when you get healed. And he said, don't tell him. Okay? And he drops it. It doesn't say he went and he told. Anyway, but in Mark 1, in verse 24, somewhere down there, it said that Jesus confronts a man with a demon, and he says, have you come to destroy us? This is the demon. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him Excuse me. Yeah, I should have brought my Bible. He said, but Jesus rebuked him, saying, be silent and come out of him. And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. And then they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, what is this? A new teaching, a new authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding regions. You know, those people talk about it, you know? And it said somewhere, it says somewhere else, maybe it was before that. Anyway, but it says, it's almost like saying, after that, there was no peace. You know, Jesus couldn't just work anonymously doing, you know, doing what he did. But I think we also said that it's hard to, you know, to keep all that stuff quiet. If it happened, you know, if it happened to you, I think if it happened to me, we'd probably all do the same thing. Anyway, we talked about healing the centurion servant, and we left out, we talked about him healing Peter's mother-in-law, and then he had come out after that, and there was many people that were there, and it said that he healed them all. You know, it said that, you know, it said that he healed all of those, that he healed all of those people. So we left out, we go into, yeah, it said 17, or 16, I think it was. Page here. Verse 16 in chapter 8 says, that evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. What Jesus is doing is he's just going around step by step, establishing his kingdom. Okay, and you see that throughout the Gospels. He's either establishing his kingdom against Satan, against the demons, against the religious leaders, whoever it is that keeps the people from recognizing him as the king of the coming kingdom, or the kingdom that has, you know, that has come. So we left off in verse 18, 18. And it's not all of these are healings, but these are things that Jesus does for a purpose. He says, now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side, you know, because he's trying to avoid the crowds. And a scribe came up to him and said, teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And another of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, follow me and leave the dead to bury their own. Kind of a strange thing.
Yeah.
You know, but here's the thing. People are quick to commit to follow Jesus. These are like the guys that we'll see, well, I don't see, but in John chapter 6, in fact, Pastor read from John chapter 6 today, who had followed him around. They were just after a free meal. This was after the feeding of the 5,000. You know, you feed me, I'll follow you. You know, and that's what they're doing. So when people say, Jesus, I'll follow you anywhere, Jesus puts them to the test. You know, one of the parables later, he says, you've got to count the cost. You know, what good is it for a builder who, you know, says he's going to build a house? It turns out he can't finish the house. You know, so he's challenging them. And this goes back, Pastor could have been my woman back, this one, because he talked about, you know, things that Jesus says that are offensive. If somebody came up to me and said, hey, I'd really like to follow you, I'd like to learn from you, I'd like to be your helper and stuff like that, and I'd say, no, let me tell you, you know, I don't have any place for you to stay. I don't have, you know, foxes don't have a place to live, this and that. I mean, he's challenging, you know, the people. So and he says, And the other disciple said, first let me go bury my father and mother. What is he saying there? And this is famous. And what have you all heard about that? You know, let me go bury my father and my mother first. Sorry, Mom, your time's up.
It's not as,
Head in the shovel, dig a hole and,
it's not as important.
Yeah.
huh?
It's not as important. His priorities is to take care of the dead person.
Well, even if it wasn't to take care of the parents, it's an excuse. I'll follow you. Right.
Yeah.
I'll follow you when it's convenient. You know, let my parents die first. You know, and then I'll follow you. What did Jesus say? You know, about loving your father and your mother more than him. You know, I mean, he really puts people to, you know, to the challenge. Now, we know that Jesus wants us to care for our father, you know, for our parents, our kids, our, you know, whatever. But it's the attitude, you know, of if you, yeah, my commitment is to you. But because my commitment is to you, Jesus, I'm taking care of my parents. What this guy's saying is, my commitment's second to taking care of my parents. You're right up there. Yeah, I mean, you're in my top. So Jesus said, follow me and leave the dead to bury the dead. So, you know, you know, in one place, you know, Jesus says, you know, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to earth. I do not come to bring peace but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anybody find that difficult? I mean, a difficult statement? Right. Who the heck is this guy? And that's what the people do. They hear this stuff and they turn away. Yeah. But what he's saying is that if you follow me, remember, this is a deeply tight-knit religious Jewish culture. And as you turn away from that culture, you're turning away from your family. You're the one who's making the separation. You know, and Jesus said, that's what I'm not so much calling you to do that, but if your family reacts that way, you know. When I left being a Jew, I was fortunate. My parents didn't care enough about their religion to be concerned about what I was switching to. You know, but a lot of people, you know, I mean, in a lot of Jewish cultures, they'll hold a funeral. I mean, they'll, you know, have a wake for the person that's left, you know, that's left their faith. And I don't know how many others, I don't know. Buddhists do that, if their kids go off to be, you know, go off to be Buddhists. But Jesus is just making that, you know, that point, talking to those people. But what he's saying is, you don't get to choose how you follow the king. You know, you're either going to follow the king, or you're not going to follow the king. Here's the rules for following the king. That's what I'm saying. He comes off the mountain and he's going through this period of time during chapters 8 and 9. He's trying to convince people that he is the king. Yeah. When just as an add-on, when they were on the in John chapter 6, and they just come from you know, the feeding of the 5,000, and Jesus is giving them something the pastor read this morning, talking about, you know, eating my body, eating my blood. And the Jews are going, this is spooky. Spooky stuff. You know, we've had 1,500 years of the law telling us that we don't drink blood. We don't do those kind of things. And here is this guy saying this. And the result was, and it says at the very beginning, these are his disciples, it says, you know, not just the 12, these are his followers, people who've been following him. And they all left because the saying got too hard. Following the king into the kingdom becomes too hard. And they all left. You know, that was Jesus's anti-church growth program. That he may have gone from 5,000 people to 12 people like that. You know, but that's what he wanted. He wanted those 12, and then the 12, you know, they're getting a little jelly right there. You know, and he turns to them and says, "Are you going to leave also?" And they go, "No." It's not like no because you the man. It's no, where else are we going to go? And then they realize because he's the man, you know, you have the truth. Yeah, and that's what people get confronted with, right?
When he's making the statement of let the dead bury the dead, is he saying okay, when he's saying that let the dead bury their own dead, is he talking about non-believers? Non-believers to bury their dead?
Say, well. Okay. Lightning strike. I think I think he probably is. He's saying, let the non-believers bury the non-believers. We got work to do in the, you know, in the kingdom. You know, how deep the unbelievers are into their unbelief, I don't know, because he's still talking to people, he's still witnessing people, he's still trying to draw people into the, you know, into the kingdom. Yeah, I said this I think on the last 2 Fridays at Masters Noon, while we're going through all the imagery language in Revelation, is I firmly believe we have trouble with comments and saying, I think people there knew what he was saying. He was just talking in, you know, you think of some saying that we have now, that 1,000 years from now, nobody would.
Yeah.
23 skidoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some saying that we might use today. That nobody 100 years from now will know what you know what you're talking about, right?
Okay, and I had another question as far as when Jesus say walk into a town, why did he just do a blanket healing rather than an individual healing?
Wait, say that one more time?
Why didn't he do a blanket healing? Say walk into Capernaum and he would just say, let all believers be healed and doom, you know, is done. Instead, he goes individually, you know, person by person saying, do you want to be healed or be healed? Or if the individual says, I need to be healed. So it's individualized, not blanketed.
Well, yes and no. I said last week when I brought up John chapter 5 at the pool of Bethesda. You know, and that one guy who couldn't get in the pool, I think they should have gone back and read it. I think only one guy a day got, you know, first in, yeah. You know, first in got healed, and this guy could never be first, you know, first in. But, you know, what I said was, but how many people did Jesus step over, you know, to get to the one guy so he could make the point? He healed that one guy. Now that was public. We see other healings, you know, there's one that got to, well, the one that we just did, but there's one where it's in the synagogue, you know, and it's in front of all the church leaders that are in the synagogue, and they're not complaining that he healed, they're complaining that he healed on the Sabbath. So they're not going to be won over, because the healing meant nothing to them. You did it on the wrong day, you didn't follow the church rules. So they don't. Now it says that all those people outside his mother-in-law's house, Peter's mother-in-law's house, you know, when he came out, there was all these people that were there, in verse 16, there in chapter 8, said he healed all them. I don't know how he did it. You know, I don't know that he did that, and you'll all be healed.
Right.
You know, or if he did it, they may have lined up and they did it. We see places, you know, the one where the guys lowered
Yes.
the guy on the bed, you know, through the roof,
Mhm.
because everybody was waiting in line. Okay,
Yeah.
so there it's a 1-to-1. They just didn't want to wait in line. So they went up on the roof, took the rooftop off and lowered them, you know, lowered them down. Andy,
You know, this kind of parallels what you're saying. But these people that have passed away, they're telling you, let the dead bury the dead. They didn't really bury it, they put them in tombs that could be reopened later, either for moving or adding to. And so there's some discrepancies in it that we just don't understand.
well, culturally, that's true. That's why you need to read books on this kind of stuff to find out what was, you know, there's books. I know an old one that I have that got 40 years ago, it's probably written 100 years before that, it's the manners and customs of the Bible. You know, it talks about all those things that they, was customary ways that they did things so that you can put it in, you know, in a perspective. You know, whether they buried and, you know, did the tombs, I don't know. I know the rich people had the tombs because you had to, they had to cost something for people to dig out the tombs and the catacombs and things like that, so. Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess for Ray, your question that, you know, Jesus could have done, go in the town and healed everyone. He could have just taken bread and fish and fed everyone. No one had a food shortage. He could have made wine out of water. He could have done a lot of things, but I guess his mission was to seek and to save the lost. And some of these things were ways or means by which he would reach people besides his preaching too. But this was like Gene saying that the coming of the kingdom, that Jesus is kind of showing them that this is a new way, you know, and showing that he's the king, the son of God in the flesh that's come, and his kingdom is there. And these are visual signs, these miracles that he does, but he just doesn't just kind of randomly do them. Or even what people notice, and like I preach sometimes, like he fed the 5,000 plus. He has them sit in groups on the grass, and it's like, how many people there knew where the food came from? Maybe if you're up front, you say, hey, he only started out with 5 and 2, right? Or, but it really, he was using that, and then people were following him because he filled up their belly. Maybe they were hungry, and but he didn't really want people just following for that reason, because that wasn't the real purpose why he came.
It's, it's what Pat's saying. Are they coming for the wonders, the sign and wonders, or are they coming for the message? You know, a friend of mine, in fact, it was just this week, he's arranged, he's up in Wisconsin. Wisconsin. No, but he had arranged for a speaker to come for Wednesday night and got a professor at a Lutheran seminary, you know, up there to come and made and put on an invite up to the district and all of that. And so, and then he sent me the video when it was done. But I asked him, I go, well, how did it go? And he said, well, he goes, you know, he goes, it really was, he goes, we had some people from other churches in the district, because I really wasn't happy with the lay attendance. And yes, how many of you think came? And he said 30. And I go, well, maybe word will get out that, you know, you put together good programs and they'll kind of, he goes, maybe we should have served food. Then we said, maybe we should have served food, more people would come. And I go, if we would have served food, you probably would have had more people, but then they came for the food, not for the message. Now, that doesn't mean that once you have an empty belly full of that, that they can't hear the message and do it. But it's, if people won't come just because, hey, let us do it when we say that. You're not going to come and, come and do that. But like I said, I think the main thing is that we don't get to choose. And we do look and say, yeah, if Jesus had come into town and said, all you people are here, all you people go check your bank accounts. That'd be a good one. Like that. But then people are in it for the wrong, in it for the wrong reason. Because he could just come into town and say, hey, you know what, since you guys haven't gone to bed yet, you're all saved.
Yeah.
Well, he could have, but that isn't the way, isn't the way they do it. So, let's see. Next one is, Jesus calms the storm. Now, this is the thing where Jesus is setting up his kingdom and his kingship over nature itself. Okay? Because he can do this. It says, and when he, let me make sure I got my pages back here. I already got them out of order. Oh, I didn't have them out of order. Is that? Oh, anyway, so verse 23 says, and when he got into the boat, the disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves. But he was asleep. And they went and woke him, saying, save us, Lord. And he said to them, why are you afraid, O you of little faith? Then he arose, rebuked the winds, the sea, and there was a great calm. And the men marveled, saying, what sort of man is this, that even the winds obey him? So a couple of things is, shows the manhood of Jesus, and he's holy man, gets tired, gotta go take a nap. So he does that. But then a great storm comes up. Now, whether this was just a normal storm, whether this was a storm generated by the devil to attack at Jesus, we get that. If you look at the second half of your sheet, I've got demon possession there. Well, whatever it might be, the storm comes up, and the fishermen, the sailors, they're afraid. And they go, hey, let's go. We got this carpenter asleep down here, but he can do something about it. Anyway, but he was asleep, and they went and woke him up. Now, can you imagine? Here's the conversation. Okay. Go wake up God. Not waking up God. You go wake up God. Okay, we'll draw squads. But that's what I get into. These guys are the professional fishermen, the professional, sailors. They don't know what to do. And maybe this will answer your question a little bit, right? And he said to them, why are you afraid, O you of little faith? Now, these are the guys who've been traveling with them. These are the guys who've been watching them make the miracles and healing the people, feeding the 5,000 and all of that. And, I think Jesus' response or my response, if I were him, my response would be, hey, we've got God down there. He can take care of this storm. God, get up, take care of the storm. But they wake them up and they're afraid. I don't know if they have confidence in him. So that may be, a part of the thing, that just the signs and the wonders don't do your faith. I mean, they might for a little while, but not for the long, term. So. Yeah.
Even like he had just healed all these people after healing Peter's mother-in-law that you went through. These demon possessed people, all the sick are coming to him. And their comment though is, what kind of man is this? The wind and the sea? Like, what were the other things, right? Like, they aren't getting it, right? And so they need to keep being taught through these signs, these miracles. But, you know, they're slow to get it, and often we're slow to get it too.
Then it's gonna come down to, Jesus may have been talking about this. I may just have a dream about it. But, you know, it's all gonna be there so that when the resurrection happens, they get that aha moment. You know, out of it. You know, that's what he was talking about. That's what he was doing. You know, those kinds of things. So again, like I say, he's setting up his kingdom, he's going against the people that were opposed to him. Yeah.
Well, they didn't get it until the Holy Spirit came upon them with tongues of fire. And that's when they realized as to what was going on around them. And that's when they started, you know, doing their ministries. Before that, they were kind of blind as far as what was going on around them. They accepted it, but still had little faith in what was being done.
Yeah. And are we any different? I mean, we said here, we have the Holy Spirit, who here doesn't have that? Try to figure something, not just figure out something, but go beyond what it is that we should be figuring out, and just accepting by, you know, by faith, you know, as we go. So, let's see, in verse 30. Down that far. So verse 30 says, here we go. In verse 28, got on your list, Jesus heals 2 men with demons. And we're going to get down to this part about demon possession, of the role of the devil and demons in people's lives that create problems for, you know, for the people. So it says in verse 28, and when he came to the other side, so, you know, they're going to get off the boat, to the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men met him coming out of the tombs, so fierce that no one could pass that way. So here's what's happening, is that, so they went across the lake, which is now the other side of the Jordan, and they're in more pagan area. Okay, I mean, it's a Jewish area, but people act like pagans. They act like they act like non-believers. It's easy for the demons to, you know, to work in these, you know, in these people. And just so you know, you know the story that he cast the demons out of the man, and where does he cast them into? Pigs. What are Jews doing raising pigs? So they're not supposed to, but that was the way that they have disregarded their. But then we'll read the story. But now here's the question: why did Jesus go? So it says, and it says that you know, it's called other places, the maniac, you know, of the Gadarenes. But there was 2 men, and they were so fierce, I mean, because they're crazed out of their minds, you know, that nobody would pass by. You were on the road, you know, you took a detour around their cave or wherever they, you know, wherever they lived. Anyway, and that was Gentile country too. I mean, it was, you know, the Jews would move over to live with the Gentiles because it was just an easier life for them. So, and behold, they cried out, what have you to do with us, O Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time? So one, they call him Son of God. And this is a demon speaking through these guys. You know, one, they call him Son of God. They recognize who he is. when I read the Mark 1 thing, where they were in the temple, and demon possessed guy came, and Jesus was casting him out. He called him Son of God. All of Jesus's enemies always know who Jesus is. They just fight against it. You know, you talk to unbelievers, unbelievers in your family, your friends, people you work with, they know, but they fight it. You know, they know who Jesus is, and especially if they've been born into America. You know, they know who Jesus is, they just fight it. Their intellect, their reason, their emotions, whatever it is, just keep them from accepting it. You know, you can make a case that demons made them not accept.
It's interesting that even the demons knew something about God's plan because they said before the time, as if they knew the time schedule. I mean,
Yeah, we're gonna do this before the time. So we know. I mean, they know. This is the thing. They know.
he's going to do it.
Yeah, you would think, I don't think we have a case of a single demon. Some of you scholars out there can correct me that says, I'm switching sides. You know? The demons, people do. All the people that get the devil thrown out, the demons thrown out of them, they all change sides.
But why not the demon?
Pardon?
But why not the demon?
Well, I'm not the demons. But that's a good point. What they say, before the time.
Gene,
Right.
why did the demons have to be cast into the pigs? What?
Well, probably to them, it was probably being better than cast into outer dark.
Okay.
But I think that's what they know is the time.
Cast back into the pit.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get that part of it down. So in John 12:31, he says, now is the judgment of this world. Now will the ruler of this world be cast out. So when you hear John, what they're saying is that the ruler of this world, this earthly, not the world, the earthly realm, is the devil. There's a time when he will be cast out. And God knows what that time is. Sounds like the demon knows what that time is. You know what that time is. Well. Let's see. Okay, so it says in verse 30, now a herd of many pigs was feeding at some distance from them. And the demons begged him, saying, if you cast us out, send us away into this herd of pigs. Now you got the demons negotiating. They're negotiating with God. They have nothing to give God. They have nothing to bring to the table to negotiate with, but they're trying to negotiate. So whatever being tossed into the pigs is better than what they know is their doom. And we see in the book of Revelation at the end, in chapters 19 and 20, we see that that the beast of the Antichrist get tossed into the lake of fire. The dragon, who is the devil, in chapter 20, gets thrown into the lake of fire. But they get thrown into hell, and hell is cast into the lake of fire. So we know that, whether that's all of his demons, like Job brought up, it talks about the abyss. There was a time that they're locked in the abyss, whatever the abyss is, might be like Absalom, some of those 123 say, I don't know. But there's places and that they, and that they know. And that is unique. And anybody who's reading this since the time of Jesus pretty much knows what the story is too.
I heard,
You guys know what the story is now that we've talked about.
I heard a presenter say one time on this passage that this was the first case of devil's ham.
Rayism.
I mean, if you look at the cans of devil pigs, it's got a, it's got a picture of the devil with his pitchfork. You know, So. So even makers of devil can understand. So he says, if he casts us out, send us away into the herd of pigs. And he said to them, go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. Even the pigs didn't want the devil in them. They didn't want those demons. Demons in them. So you can imagine if you did that to the pigs, what it does to humans. What devil possession, demon possession does to them.
And like when we were in Israel, our tour guide Yosef, when we were in Israel, our tour guide Yosef said, yeah, think about that poor pig farmer. It was a really bad day for him.
Well, that's the way, after that incident, they wanted them.
I mean, it's
They
whole.
wanted them out.
Yeah.
And again, in fact, let me see. I don't think I went that far. In my notes, because I changed my notes, but let me go back to Matthew. What was that, 8, then 8 still? Yeah, in 8, I think that maybe that was the punchline there. Is that, let's see. And he said, go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. The herdsmen fled, and going into the city, they told everything, especially what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, all the city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. I mean, again, that comes down to that, follow me like your mother and your father. You can see all the miracles, you can see the signs. I mean, you have the demon-possessed guys living there with you. You know what you're doing is your business is kind of illegitimate with the Jewish religious leaders. And here's the guy who sets all things back in order. He cleans up these two guys, he gets rid of the demons. He gets rid of your illegitimate business. I mean, you are all ready to walk around with a white robe and heel. Be like that. And they don't. They're mad. I was gonna say upset the apple, but it upsets the pig part.
Yeah, this kind of opens up a list of questions. Was Jesus really honoring the request of the demons to go into the pigs, or was it just his way of getting rid of all the unclean food? And second of all, once the pigs drown, are not the demons free to go to somebody else?
It doesn't say, so we don't know. I mean, I don't think that demons are necessarily
Drown.
Yeah, but, they drown because they're spirits. So I don't know, but again, that's one of those things, Bible doesn't say, so at a certain point, you have to stop and just go with.
What it says.
Go with what you have in the, and so the main thing was that they wanted to know. A lot of, and again, a lot of people, you may have family and friends, that you talk to about, things about Jesus. And they're going, yeah. And then you hit a forward. And you just see them just change. And you become more hardened. Against just because when you were talking in general.
It was okay.
That table over there, they believe Jesus. It's really sounding good. But they get to this table and these guys, they dig in there, they dig in. So, and again, it doesn't say that, except for this little kid who came up to Jesus and said, thank you, Jesus, for getting rid of these demons and those people and setting us on the right. You don't even get there yet. Get in. let's go on to that.
Gene, one more thing. So the people wanted him out of there quickly. The people wanted Jesus out of there quickly. But just think about their conversation after he left. Like people would be telling this story time and time again. And so we don't know what happened, but Jesus told, when he told the guy that was healed, go and tell your friends what I've done for you. And so there's a lot going on here beyond what Matthew records, right? So afterwards, we don't know a lot what happened to the region besides get them out of here. Pigs are all drowned, but people are still talking about this Jesus. They may not believe
Right.
that he's the son of God by any means, but probably generates a lot of discussion at the dinner table. No bacon shortage though.
People followed him in John chapter 6. He gave the sermon about, I am the bread of life. I mean, after feeding all of them, and then they follow him, and then they end up with him there, and he's giving the sermon, I am the bread of life. And if they're good Jews, they know the bread of life. They know it's in Moses to it. They know how God cared for them by giving them the manna, to eat every day. Or they knew about the showbread that was placed in the, in the temple. I mean, they knew what bread meant. And you give that, and they reject it. I don't know that they, again, maybe it skips a generation. Maybe those people are still hardened, but the other people in the gatherings are, their kids. You don't know, because it doesn't say. I think the point is that Matthew makes is that it wasn't good enough. That you can't follow me as the king into my kingdom while you still live this way or believe this way, conduct your business this way, because you haven't put me first. Okay. And even if they had come to Jesus at the end of it, maybe what if it was out of fear? This guy's too powerful. This guy's like Genghis Khan. I mean, no, seriously. I mean, maybe he's here for bad. How do we know? We don't know what goes through people's minds. So let's see, chapter 9, verses 1 through 8. And getting into a boat, he crossed over. He gets back into a boat and came to his own city. And behold, some people brought to him a paralytic lying on a bed. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven. And behold, some of the scribes said to themselves, this man is blaspheming. But Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, why do you think evil in your hearts? For which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, rise and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, he then said to the paralytic, rise, pick up your bed, and go home. And he rose and went home. And when the crowd saw it, they were afraid, and they glorified God who had given such authority to men. Okay, so there's a different reaction, is that they gave glory to God for what they'd seen. Maybe they didn't understand it. But see, what Jesus is saying is that when he healed us, he's forgiving because of their sin. He's forgiving their sin. So he's either healing people to cast out demons, which are causing them to sin, or he's casting out, or he's healing their illnesses because they know that people are sick because of their sin. I don't know how that works today. We've insulated ourselves, from that. Who here associates their illnesses to the sin? Besides the drinking, the smoking, which those aren't sins, they're sins that you make yourself sick, doing them.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many people today would think, I'm ill, there must be sin in me? We don't. And I have this, I want to stay away from, the faith healers, because faith healers go the opposite way, is go the other way, is they say if you had enough faith, you wouldn't be sick. So you can fall in the ditch and, both sides. But Jesus is saying here, in this case, anyway, that somehow his illness is associated with sin. That's why he started out. Your sin is forgiven. Pick up your mat and walk. You have insight on that, Pastor? Laying hands on people or?
Well, I was thinking more about when the guy came and they lowered him through the roof and stuff, and the expectation was for physical healing. And I'm thinking this guy's, Jesus says your sins are forgiven, and it's like, is that all I get? We don't get to that point. But think about us, it's like we want the physical healing, but it's secondary to eternal healing. And so, so I do think some of the healers that they have, if they're using it to God's glory, healing people, that leads them to better knowledge of Jesus rather than just like get up and walk, then that's the difference.
One guy being lowered through the roof to be healed, really speaks against the faith healers who say they have more faith, because it wasn't the faith of the guy that was on the bed. It was the faith of his friends who lowered him.
Those are the kind of friends you want.
That's right. Those are the kind of friends that you-
Surround yourself.
Huh?
Yeah, and surround yourself with those type of people.
Yeah, it's their thing that, well, the guy was unconscious. And had zero, zero thing. Well, we'll talk about that next week. We'll get into what I've got here for the people that were demon possessed. And the question I have at the bottom of that sheet there is there demon possession today?
Yes.
So, and how do we recognize?
Yeah, there is.
I live deep in the deepest hole. How do we know it? And then but then again, on the other side, you don't want to throw everything off to, what was that, man? Flip Wolf. The devil made it. Like I said, you don't want to throw it all out there. But here we're gonna have, however many I have listed there, as far as people, demon possessed, because that's just in Jesus' time. Jesus just around 3 years.
I don't know, you look at people like Jeffrey Dahmer that are in our society today. They're people without soul. They gotta be demon possessed.
Yeah, I don't know why, again, how do you recognize it? I mean, you recognize it after the fact, that's like, even a Jeffrey Dahmer thing, people will always say, I live next door for 20 years.
I know, never knew.
But who knew that about people carrying on this house? That, you don't.
Behavior, that's about it. Behavior is the only example you can use.
Yeah, we don't know. But then again, we've gotten away from, I think we talked about this some weeks ago, about the spirit world. We've gotten so insulated against the spirit world to realize what's happening, in heaven. And you read, like, I think it was in Daniel, in Revelation, about the wars. Like that. Those aren't just for that to happen. There's probably something happening. There's probably a war in heaven today when Pastor Skip did the invocation. Bring God here. There's probably a war in heaven to stop all that. We don't see it. We yawn, look at our lives. Okay, we got 10 more minutes. Yeah, you know, stuff like that. So we're not as in tune to that. But then again, you don't want to go, you're gonna say something right? Oh, then
Yeah, I just finished reading a book by James Patterson called Murder, Coast to Coast, where I don't, what, they had two young children that the psychiatrist decided to perform experimental science on them to see if they could split their personalities. And one is weaker than the other, so the weaker one is succumbed to the psychological effects that they were having them, put them in a dark room and stuff like that, and basically doing nothing but evil. And they turned the weaker one into an assassin or a
is this a fiction or?
it's fiction.
Well, I know he writes fiction, but he also does non-fiction.
But it, you know, but oftentimes fiction follows nonfiction.
Oh, that's, well, just the fact that it goes through his mind,
Yeah.
shows you how wicked his mind may, you know, may be, you know, that, you know, that he can even, you know, imagine, you know, these kinds, you know, these kinds of things. I mean, you don't know. So, okay, well, let's end there and we'll get back into, you know, we'll get back into that. But like I said, just keep in mind that Jesus is doing this, setting up his kingdom, establishing his kingdom. Those who have an ear to hear are the ones who get it. Those who don't are the ones who fumble in the dark. I guess the question comes up, how do you get the ears to hear? Or is everybody given the ears to hear? But some people just don't use them. They, you know, they let them go. You know, it's the same old question. Why are some saved and why aren't others? You know, you have two people that sit together in a church service. Pastor Skip preaches the gospel. One person gets it. You know, I mean, it drills right down into his heart and soul. And the other person just sits right next to him, same message. Yeah, because I don't get it. That makes no sense at all.
We don't qualify ourselves.
Pardon?
We don't qualify ourselves.
No, but I'm saying,
Just put it out in the back.
but no, but that's the question, why some and not others?
It's above our
That's
pay grade.
it's the one.
Above my
thing
pay
you
grade.
can't answer.
So we're not supposed to know.
No, I didn't know that. That didn't stop you from asking. I'm just saying, when you see these, then I'm not asking what I'm saying, it's like that.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure out, you know, why people won't respond. Because what we'll do is if I'm talking to two people, one gets it, one doesn't, I'll turn to the one that doesn't, you smell it works.
No, just hit him in the forehead and say, devil, be gone.
People do that. Are we done?
We're done.
Howard, you okay? You hear okay?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Let's close with Lord's Prayer. Be done. Our Father,
Lord, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you.
count yourself.
Keep track of that.